Hey, Just Keep Living family. I am excited to see you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, I have a very good friend and I admire her. So it's kind of interesting how we met and how we've engaged. And the more I get to know her, the more I like her and the more I admire her. So I'm so glad that you could come in and join us today. Get yourself comfortable. Get a notepad out too so that you can follow up on any directions that she drops. She's going to drop some nuggets. But we have Michaella Ramler in the house this morning. Hey, Michaella.
Hey, friend.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you could squeeze me into your schedule. And we started off talking about you had a great morning. You had a great morning's conversation, right? With the potential new tenant. And so we're going to talk about how you started getting into the business of development, because now you're in development, not just real estate flipping. But I always open up and ask my guests, how do we first meet?
Marva was my very strict BSF teacher, Bible study fellowship. Yeah, you walked in that class and I was like, oh, I better be doing my homework. That's how, but was beautiful. And yeah, she was teaching me about the Lord, and I love my time with you then.
Yay, same here, same here. The one thing, and I've had BSF group, people in the chair before, is that the rigidness and the strictness comes from the headquarters. And so we have to follow guidelines and protocol so we get stuff done.
You're not actually strict, but you know that if we don't take the Lord seriously, then why are we here?
Oh, it's so funny you say that, because I was with a new person the other day and she has the same perspective. Like, because I don't go to church to play. Yeah. And I don't study the word to play, because there's so much lies from the enemy, attacks from the world. So we really are putting on our armor. And so I take that part very seriously and disciplined and all that. So, but offline, we got to know each other a bit better once I found out, because we don't have time. That's the other thing. We don't have time in that Bible study fellowship time together. We don't have time to really get to know each other and what we do, who we're married to, what our family life is like, what our routine is about. But my husband and I got to know you and AJ a little bit better when I found out that you're in real estate then. And so that had to be like 6 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
6 years ago.
Yeah, 6 or 5. That's when I was at BSF.
Yeah.
But.
And so how did you start that journey into real estate? You're married and this was life before kids, I'm assuming?
Yeah, life before babies. We got married out of college and he was studying real estate. And so he knew, like, okay, how do we get a loan? And then my family had been in real estate investment and development in Oklahoma City for decades. So,
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was like, we gotta do real estate. Yeah, let's go. And so we graduate college, scrap together all the money we can, and I had to sell my horse. I had this horse I was riding through college, but and then we got a quadplex with a basement, and we lived in that basement. Like, we converted it. It was leaky and stinky, but we sucked it up because we wanted to keep our eyes on the end. So we lived there for 6 years, had both our kids down there.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yep.
But slow down, because I want to go back. You went to college, but you and AJ met in elementary school, high school, junior high school?
Yeah, we were homeschooled together.
You were homeschooled.
We met through a homeschool collaborative.
Yeah.
So we were 9 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Y'all met at 9?
Yeah.
Yay!
We got some good marriage counseling going on.
You needed it.
A long history to work through.
But so, and I told you I wanted to ask, because I'm not homeschooled, right?
Yeah.
And so people have this perception of, like, people that know me outside of Texas and outside of Dallas, all around the country, that are going to be listening. What is the homeschool experience like? So, like, there's this stereotype, especially with Texas homeschool folks, but you seem very well-grounded and nurturing and normal, and people are laughing if I've done the normal quotes because they know. Yeah. So if you're not from here, you have a perception that homeschool is, weird and...
Totally.
Yeah.
And yes to all those things.
Okay.
There's a bunch of weirdos. I'm definitely not normal.
You are. You're wonderful, but you don't fit that stereotype.
Yes.
Because what was the drive for the homeschool?
There's a whole spectrum of that. But my parents' story is I was public schooled. And in the 3rd grade was when Texas wanted to roll out, well, for the 4th grade year, they wanted to roll out standardized testing. Mm-hmm. And my parents had met some homeschooling families. They'd never heard about it in our neighborhood. And I remember the day they sat me down on a couch in their room and they said, hey, we heard about this thing called homeschooling. You know, my mom didn't work at that time, and would you like to try it? And they're like, you know, these 2 friends do it. And I said, okay, let's try it. So I went all the way through till graduation, mm-hmm. did some early college stuff, and it was wonderful for me. Yeah. Great for my personality.
Yes.
My brother did better when he went junior and senior year to normal school. Yeah.
A public school.
So I think it depends on what the person is and what their situation is.
But I like the options. And so that's what I want to always point to hope and best practices. Like if people are listening, like homeschooling doesn't have to just be this. It can create this. And so
all sorts of shapes. Yeah. And so we are part of this collaborative, which I think I could not have done this the normal, like me and mother at the dining room table. Right. 8 to 5, you know, I couldn't have done that. Right. But the collaborative was really fun. It was basically like university model private school in a way. Mm-hmm.
What are some of your best memories coming out of that besides you and AJ? Besides, like, everybody doesn't meet their husband at 9 years old and then stay with it.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I don't fully recommend that. That's a crazy ride. It's a good one, but a crazy one. My best memory when they launched, so basically it was a group of families that were kind of meeting in houses, and they were growing. And then this one woman in particular, Terry Reed, had this big vision, and she's just CEO type level, cool lady. Yeah. She said, I want to open this up to everybody. Anyone who wants to in the Metroplex, like, come to this collaborative. Mm-hmm. And she reached out to this camp, kind of like Duncanville vibey, over there on the hill off of the Loop, but it was called Camp Elhar at the time. She negotiated a lease with them, and we had homeschool collaborative at this camp. Wow. And they dropped like the portables, so we like went from portable to portable for, like, you know, physics or whatever, Texas history. But all of our electives were camp-based, so you could do archery class or horseback riding, which I clearly did that one. That was fun. Right. So that was just magical. Like, you know, the bell rings and you just walk between nature, maybe hit the swing a couple times, and then go to your next class.
But so what I'm hearing out of you, so I have the perspective of, like, knowing and seeing, like, as we did the walkthrough of one of your developments now, but, like, to be surrounded by a person that knows how to negotiate terms and deals, and to have that open, wild, not boxed in thinking, you've experienced that. So all of that makes up the wonderful person that you are today. Because I'm like, Michaella, how do you know how to do that? Why aren't you afraid of, you know, this? But it's because you had so much freedom.
I had a lot of freedom to be a self-learner, self-explorer. Both my parents were also entrepreneurs, so they just internally had that. All entrepreneurs are self-learners, right? Right. I think. Yeah. And so, not only did I have that provided to me through my homeschooling experience, but got to watch my parents as well. Like, got to draw up my dad's logo with him when I was 10. And, so that's kind of what, I think prepared my muscle memory to be able to enter into contexts I don't know fully, but I can figure them out.
Right. So when did you know you were smart enough to figure it out? Was that something that was developed in? Like, I think with people that I admire that are so smart and self-sufficient, I'm like, when did you know that?
Curveball. Probably when I was a middle school teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, I studied education in college. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And honestly, I don't even really like kids. I don't really know how that happened, but it did. I do like middle schoolers. I'm like, okay, y'all are fun, and, like, y'all are critical development stage. So I studied middle school education, taught Dallas ISD. It was brutal. Total. Are we allowed to cuss on this show? Yeah. Okay. It was a total ass kicking, and they literally dump you in to 7th grade with no help. Okay. I mean, it's hard, and you got 120 kids you're responsible for, and you're straight out of college. And then the first year I taught, I didn't have a classroom. They gave me a cart, and I had to move my cart from class to class every period.
Wow.
Those I taught for 4 years, and probably the hardest thing I've ever done. And so, but that really was, I figured out, like, okay, you got to figure things out. Like, these kids are going to eat you for lunch, and no one's going to help you.
Right.
And they can cuss you out, and no one's going to do anything about it.
Wow.
Like, you got to figure out how to engage them, how to set up lesson plan. Like, you know, that was my like first adult experience of like jump in and run and figure things out and don't drown.
Right.
And it was really fun for me. It gave me a lot of confidence. Like, if I can figure that out, I can figure out anything.
Yeah.
And I think that really, and that kind of was happening at the same time that we were also buying real estate. So by the time that I was ready to go do something bigger in real estate, I was just like, figure,
I've done that.
Figure anything out. Yeah. And the 7th grade classroom was the hardest of them all.
So did you have the kids when you were teaching and you guys had the quadruplex?
So our kids came later in life, which was really helpful. I'm grateful that we got to have time without kids. It enabled us to be scrappier for longer. But I was teaching W-2 job. My husband had W-2 job. And we were buying real estate for 4 years before we had kids, maybe 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what started? So now I'm ready. Like, okay, so what was the first property? Because I thought you said it was the
quadplex. That's the first one.
Okay.
Yeah. And that really enabled us to, owner occupied real estate is very powerful, especially in today's market. You can get better financing terms, less down. So it's low barrier to entry, 3% down versus 20% down. That's a huge difference. So we owner occupied that asset for 6 years. And, not only did we live for free, we lived and got paid. So we lived in the basement, right? Rented out all 4 up top. So living super skinny, but also making money that helped us build our own internal capital. And then through like refinance processes, we got to acquire, I think, a portfolio of 30 units before we ever entered into our first partnership.
Okay. Into your first partnership with an outside entity.
Yeah. So
So 30 units, and then are you still living skinny and you're still living in the...
Well, I should probably live a little skinnier. But, sometimes you get lazy.
Girl, I'm not apologizing for any of that. But then you acquired another home in West Dallas. Was that during the same time?
That's a cool story. Yeah, that was after we had our son. So that was probably... That's what made us move from the basement. And it's funny. I was like, we can't buy that house. We got the sweetest gig here, like living so skinny. And
living skinny, let's define it for the people. So,
okay.
To you, living skinny look like what?
I mean,
as far as your budget. Like,
when you're living in a basement, not only are you mortgage free, you're making money from the people above you. So getting paid to live somewhere versus having rent.
So your day-to-day habits.
Day-to-day.
You know how people have the stereotypical, if you give up the Starbucks coffee, then you have accumulated so much, but you...
I'm not super good about that.
Okay.
So I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
But I used to be better.
No worries. So you acquired the 30 properties prior to purchasing the house, or that was one of that? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I tell people, don't buy your dream home until you got your...
Say it again.
Don't buy your dream home until you got your balance sheet built.
Okay.
Balance sheet means how many assets you got in your name. You don't need to be paying a mortgage on something that you probably can't even afford. But mostly, even if you can't afford it, it's excluding your capital from other vehicles because you're putting it into your dream house. So yeah, we had 30 or maybe more units before we got our dream house.
And so 30 or more doors looks like what? It could have been more quad.
Yeah, it's a quadplex, several duplexes. I don't think we had any single families at that time. So quadplexes and duplexes. Yeah.
And 30 of those before you bought a physical home. And I know that something that has rubbed off on me when we first met was just calling whatever property that we had our own, like just calling it an asset, like not even calling it a home. That was really, really helpful to make a shift. Yeah, for sure. And so then so the neat story about acquiring the home that you live in now was, what's so neat about it?
I love that story. And again, this is credit to my hubby because I was very short-sighted.
Come on, AJ Ramler.
I was like, we are not ready for our dream home. We got to keep building. But he had a bigger perspective, and it turned into be a very great investment. So I'm grateful for the push. But it was a portfolio of 3 houses, all falling down. These are Victorian 1800s falling down homes.
In West Dallas.
Yeah, and about an acre of land. And then these 3 in West Dallas, like behind the Belmont Hotel, if anyone knows where that is. Someone bring back the Belmont Hotel, please. Plug there. Love that place. So it was supposed to be, I think David Weekley had it under contract to demo and put townhomes. The Landmark Commission caught it and put a pending landmark on our home now. It's called the Struck House, Struck. Henry Struck built it in the 1800s. So they got a pending landmark on it that stopped the demo. Then Weekley backed out of the contract. I sure hope it's Weekley. I'm pretty sure it's David Weekley. So one of my hubby's little frat boy real estate friends called him up and was like, hey, bro, you like old houses, right? And AJ's like, yeah. He goes, you should make an offer on this. This just fell through. So we got it for a steal. And general contracted ourselves to help money the 3 houses. So that's that story.
That's cool.
Yep.
And I've driven by there. I think I took my producer around there a couple of weeks ago, just as I was prepping him to meet you and to talk about this. And it has built up tremendously around that neighborhood.
When we moved out there, it was fields around us.
Yes.
And then this developer came in not too long after us, Oaxaca, and he put these really cool.
They're very cool.
Yeah, Lake Flato designed haciendas, he calls them. And so that was, just wild.
Yeah.
Now it's a really sought after neighborhood. And
you were there.
I was trying to live in the basement.
And you were there. Well, you know what? That's why God gives you 2 different minds so that you can refine each other and push each other to grow. So there. And so you went from that. And so now I think when I met you pre-COVID, I had you and AJ come and speak to a group. And at that time you were at 200 doors. Of that. So it keeps growing.
Good memory, it keeps growing. Yeah. I don't even think in terms of doors anymore because we now have so much commercial asset, which you don't think of as a doors. It's so now I think in terms of, square feet, how much do we have in development, how much we sold, and so we've come a long way. And
so you've come a long way, but to encourage those, because you guys used to do lunch and learns. I know that even pre-COVID at one of the properties that me and Leonard went to visit. So to even acquire or aspire to that, how would you baby step that or ABC it 1, 2, 3 teacher?
Baby step. Owner occupy your first home.
Right.
And do that 5 times and move. I got a playbook for you. Move once every 5 years.
Did you say you have a playbook?
I'm
perfect.
the one I'm renting on now.
I got it.
You own or occupy a residential home, or preferably up to 4 units. So the financing at owner occupied can go up to 4 units if you live in it. So the dream would be you buy a 4-plex, you live in 1 unit. If there's a basement suite, then you move the next year. You keep that one, get owner occupied financing every time. And ideally, if the building has appreciated by the time the next year, you can even get a little cash out refinance just a bit for that next 3% down payment. Do that 5 times. That's what the financing allows for you. That to me is the fastest, lowest barrier entry into building your balance sheet. And then, 5 years later, you have your W-2 job. You have now a portfolio of 5 units that you can group together and do a larger cash out refinance on them. They're performing well. You have them rented, blah, blah, blah. And then if you want, you can have, let's say you pull out $300,000 between the 5. Now you have $300,000 that you can go get a building, down payment on a building. That's the fastest baby step. Another great tip is you need to be careful with this because if they're not accredited investors, you can get in big trouble. But if you genuinely have a friend or a family member who's been interested in also investing in real estate, you guys can joint venture into a partnership. And that's what we did several entities later. A lot of
joint ventures.
Yeah, friends and family. So if the down payment for that building with the construction and everything is $500,000 and you bring 10% of that, then you're 10% owner. That's like a simple way to do it.
Right. And so this is like we are accelerating up. So then after COVID and a couple of months ago, actually you said it was 18 months ago, then you took me to another venture that you were working on just solely. And it seemed to be just a wash in your vision for empowering women.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now you're empowering women with the knowledge the experience and you are like, come on, we can do it. So tell me about the Lancaster project.
Okay. I'll try not to rant too much.
No, that's okay.
But God very clearly told me, he said, it's time to leave this operation you've built with your hubby. That's called Proxy Properties. It's still going today. For a lot of reasons. Mostly because I just felt like the commercial real estate world in particular is not kind to women. And it's real not kind to wives. So if you're a woman at the table, you're pretty low on the totem pole. And if you're a wife at the table, you're like, practically invisible. And I just knew, I was like, man, I know that I love the Lord and I know he's given me talents and a heart for people.
Right.
I don't need to be invisible at this table.
Right.
I can be doing a lot more for him.
Right.
And so that kind of just to make it short and less dramatic. But
but don't make it short because
God was like, it's time. It's time to leave.
That ministers to so many people.
Yeah.
Not just,
It was time to leave for the sake of your marriage.
Yes.
Because that's first.
Please protect
So I always
that.
say I left my work hubby so I could keep my home hubby. And also he said, we got bigger things. And my heart was huge for women. Even to this day, I'm like, man, if you're a lady and you want to know about real estate, I talk to you. I can't even help it. It's like, I just got to talk to you. Yeah, I've got to. And it's so wonderful getting to hear people ask me dumb questions and be safe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey,
all the time. That was us.
I'm like, give me another dumb question. I love it.
That was it.
Those are smart people.
Because you bring with you. So this is what I say about you being normal, but it's more than normal. But because you're approachable, you're warm, and there is nothing about you that feels shameful. To be able to expose the dumb question. So that's why I'm so glad that God planted that vision with you. But tell me more.
I'll tell you more about that. But quick plug on this topic of safe place to learn and for women and minorities. There's a group called Capital Impact. I now consult with them on
Capital Impact.
Yes, Capital Impact. Their mission, and they're nationally branded, but they also have a DFW cohort. Their mission is to educate for free minorities and women on real estate development.
Well, come on.
Powerful group. Love them.
Write that down, Justin.
Yes, Capital Impact. I had their cohort out to, they asked if the cohort could come out to the downtown Lancaster project.
Great.
And I just sat with them, they buy you lunch, and we talked for 3 hours over the math, walked the project, all of it. Loved it so much. And they loved just how it went so much. And that's how I got to be 1099 with them now. And so now I get to do development, which I love, but also I had a call yesterday with a girl for an hour and just got to talk math. And she was super was able to ask me questions that she didn't feel safe to do.
For so many of us, math is the scary language.
Yeah.
But once you master it, and I always say you got to have someone on your team that does the math strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's actually really not even that complicated. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I hope that encourages y'all. I study education. I'm not a finance boy, so hope that helps you.
But it helps math. You talk about so you get to do that as a 1099, meaning that you're on as a consultant.
Yeah, I just consult with them. So that means that I can now do something else I love and get paid for it. So spend time, multiple hours, getting to talk with women about real estate.
I love it.
It's
and
so
that's
cool.
through Capital
Impact.
Capital Impact.
Please, if anyone's interested, join. Interview. Their current cohort is ending in September, and they're taking new applications. And I can help connect anyone who wants to be connected.
Perfect, because that meets a prayer need actually for me this morning with another group that I'm involved with. So I'm glad we can connect around that.
Yes.
So when you took me to the Lancaster project, Tell us. How'd you...
So the Lord told me, time to leave.
Wait a minute. You keep saying this thing about the Lord telling you stuff. So this is a good time to just tell me your salvation story. How did you get confident with knowing you could ask the Father?
Talk to the Lord.
Yeah.
My parents both had later in life salvation stories. My mom was in particularly very powerful, like horrible life. She was a professional model, lived just like definition of hard worldly life. And her salvation story was she was laying in bed and God was like, I love you. You need to follow me. So and my dad also had a really cool story. So growing up, like I heard their stories. And I was like, dang, that's pretty crazy. You didn't just walk the aisle at 5. Like, this is something cool. They also really did not ascribe to like, let's walk the aisle at 5. They really loved that scripture that all those who are called by the Father know the Father. I'm also a really bad scripture quoter.
That's okay. You got the principles.
There you go.
And you got the relationship.
Yeah. And so they're just like, Michaella, I just heard their story forever. They love sharing their story. They love sharing
I wish you would share more, but you're putting a pause on it for what? For what reason?
For my
because
parents?
Worldly experiences mean different to so many different people.
My mom? Yeah, my mom. I guess like classic, like her dad died when she was a baby, grew up in an impoverished single mom with her single mom, had like the abusive stepfather, but then was working I think she was like 18 at Dillard's, just like selling makeup, and got recruited to be a model because she's really beautiful. And then just lived that whole life, like partying, like drinking, drugs, sex, rock and roll, all of that, abortions. I mean, my mom, the whole thing. She's also just like very humble and beautiful and would be happy that I would share these things.
Good.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, she's literally just laying in bed with her boyfriend, who was a total asshole to her. And she also was married once and he committed suicide. She just has like a crazy story. And that's when the Lord was like, I love you. You're mine. This is Jesus talking, come follow me. And she was like, okay.
Wow. And so no other exposure to Jesus outside that? No one that she knew praying for her?
Oh, yeah. I know. I think she had a friend that was praying for her. Yeah, but it was not like...
No one came with the salvation message and knocking on the door and I'm going to present look at Jesus finding her.
He's crazy.
Look at Jesus finding her.
Crazy,
and so there was no shame, guilt, condemnation. She's sharing with her kids this story.
Oh, yeah.
And so you heard her story.
So I'm like...
Right.
Oh, this is my mom, who I love, and she's a great mom. She's a good woman that I love.
Absolutely.
Look at her story.
Yeah.
Jesus must be real.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So then my journey just evolved like, okay, Lord, are you real? Are you calling me to yourself? And then just wanted to learn more about the Lord. And I also really just felt this desire to have like an aha moment. Like, I know you, Lord. That was in my heart. And so I was in high school and I was just praying, like, I was actually kind of a little bit pissed at him. I was like, I've been asking for an aha moment to know that I know you.
He can handle it.
And you haven't told me yet for like a couple years.
Wow.
I was kind of upset. So I was like, are you real or not? Like, and if you're real, like, I want you today.
Right.
And my lungs did this like crazy. And I was like, my eyes got big. And I was like,
but come on, Isaac, like, you hear me from yesterday.
Lord, Holy Spirit, I think you just came in my body.
Yahweh.
Yeah.
Woo.
So that's my salvation story.
The breath. You have no idea. Our guest yesterday talked about the very breath of God that enters us. And you just were confirmation of what he was.
Don't make me cry. That's cool.
They gonna send you the video because it was powerful.
I'm gonna watch that.
It was powerful, so that you unknowing are just giving confirmation that that's how he comes through the breath. The very breath of God entered you when you were like, I want you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Isn't that cool?
And so he's speaking. So you got confirmation then. You've been talking to him ever since for guidance on this journey. And the Lord is telling you bigger things are to come. And so he's telling you, he's giving you a download. How does God talk to you? Is it dreams, visions? Is it a unction? Is it in his word? Like how?
Sometimes it's like something comes to my head and I test it. So like the Lancaster story, it's like a feeling sometimes, not an emotion, but like a leading. It's time to go. So I did.
Yeah.
And then I was like, man, what's next? And I didn't know. I was like, I probably can't do real estate anymore because that's weird. Like, what market do I go to? Like, I don't want to mess up my marriage more. I didn't really know how that would look. How does capital look at that point? So I started applying for jobs. I was all over LinkedIn. I got certified for some project management thing. I was just like all over the place. And then the Lord did tell me, turn off your LinkedIn. So started with like an inkling, and then I actually heard, turn off your LinkedIn.
Yes.
So I did. So I feel like I operate a lot with him on like incremental things.
Yes.
And also like not just sitting around and waiting. I can have like, I have had in my life like analysis paralysis. And so I try to really like, turn on LinkedIn, see what happens, right? Okay, he told me turn off LinkedIn, right?
It's okay to test them.
Yeah, it's okay to test the doors. Like at least be pushing on the doors, at least be walking around,
right.
Yeah. And so he told me to turn off LinkedIn, as I did. And I was like, okay. I was kind of mad again. Why? Like, what's next? I'm this like kind of high energy, like achiever. I can't be sitting around anymore. I was kind of going crazy. I was like, I need to get back to something. Yeah. I am ready. And then it was probably a couple of weeks later that he actually said this sentence, but in how how sometimes he'll say something and then it downloads fully. So he said, go work at home. It didn't mean go be stay-at-home mom. It meant it downloaded, go buy the downtown Lancaster and get back to work at real estate. And by the way, your new company's name is going to be Stewarding Space, and it's time to start. Time to start real estate. And so when he said go work at home, the whole like thing downloaded. And I said, well, that's crazy. That's an interesting idea. That's totally a market that my husband's not interested in. The best Southwest in general, he wants to say Oak Cliff basically. So that kind of solves for like not competing in the same market. And let's give this a try. So I thought, if I'm hearing right, let's just go test the door. So there's one owner that had 17,000 square feet of like the prime. If I was going to come in and get it, I wanted that. So I called her, and it's a longer story, but basically I was like, can I buy your portfolio? And she said, no. I said, okay, Lord, you're wrong. Like, what are you doing? You're driving me crazy.
Right.
And she called me back basically like 30 minutes later.
Really?
And was like, my husband told me I should sell it. My daughters told me they don't want it. And then God told me to sell it to you. I said, wow. Really?
Wow. That's powerful.
Okay, Lord. So I wrote the contract.
And so you kind of cold called this lady that owned this property.
Yeah. And granted, that's my hometown, right? So she knew my family. I was running around her store she had a store on the square for a while. So she like knew me, not well, but like I wasn't a stranger. And I told her also like, I've been doing real estate for a decade, done quite a bit in the Oak Cliff area. So she also knew that I wasn't going to get it and
demolish it.
Yeah, demolish it or whatever. So that's how that happened.
That's fantastic.
And then miracle after miracle came tenfold.
It is, and we walked through that when I just did the review 18 months later. But 2 miracles around that development and that story. And then tell us about the new vision that God's told you to do.
Oh, the new
one.
Yeah. So you want to hear 2 miracles?
I want to hear some miracles. Yeah. People need to know that you're proof of concept and that he's real. And he's no respecter of person. So I have my own miracle stories, but we want to hear from you.
So the miracle is this. So Lancaster, which by the way, if you're local, we say Lancaster.
Lancaster
with a kiss.
Okay.
But Lancaster, it's had like the sad racial story of it was a white suburb, and then when blacks started coming in, the white flight happened. And so as a kid, I lived through that, and I watched like the schools go from white to black, and we stayed, and my friends were white, and then they were black, and like we stayed the whole time. So that's the sad history of Lancaster, and usually white flight has really hard impacts on a community because when you have that many people leaving at once, can really hurt it. So ever since then, Lancaster has not had a lot of resource. So when I'm aware of this, like when I got this under contract. And we're like just like a normal working class, like very equivalent to Red Oak or any other southern suburb, like very normal working class community. Like there's no reason there shouldn't be resources here. Like people are making money here and then leaving home every day to go spend it in Bishop Arts.
Right.
Like no sense outside of history and historical racial problems that hurt communities every day. So you asked me a question, the miracles. Okay, miracle. So I was very aware of like, okay, there is no resource. I'm also aware that like people don't believe in this town. This might be hard to find quality tenants. Like, let's see what God can do. So when I'm walking this project and I'm making my wish list of tenants, I'm like, all right, Lord, I need this one tenant. Like, this one tenant, for so many reasons, is going to make the deal. And there's this, their name is Michaella Ramler. They're a 40-plus year Dallas brand. They incubated in Oak Cliff. They have, between their sister store, this is their 5th store. They came.
Wow.
And
now, how are you getting the tenants? You're saying it's a miracle story, but
I'm like, here's my wish list. Here's who I've seen on Instagram that I like. Here's who I've been in that I like. Like I'm also like love Michaella Ramler. I'm a fangirl. I was going there as an infant because I was born in Oak Cliff. You know, like taking my babies there as an infant. But yeah, and also like the downtown Lancaster had this beautiful cantina with a patio that I remembered from childhood. And y'all, there's like very few places that families can gather and enjoy a nice meal besides Chili's. That ain't right. You know, like we need quality places to celebrate in our communities and feel that self-worth. Like I can stay where I live. Right. That's important. And so I knew how gorgeous this cantina could be because I knew what it was as a child. And when I acquired it, it was a, in fact, I'll make this be the second miracle. I'll tell that. When I acquired it, it was a closed to public, like couldn't even open the front door, papered off praline factory.
Yes.
So like, oh my goodness, the only like quality, beautiful restaurant we have is like not even open to the public. Like that's just, sorry, y'all. That's just a shame. So I call Michaella Ramler, say, hey, y'all. And they know me through the neighborhood, and I go there a lot. And so they also wasn't a stranger, not best friends, but not a stranger. I got this development under contract. I think y'all would be slam dunk here. Your following's here. They had this huge, because they incubated in Oak Cliff, and a lot of Oak Cliff moved to the best Southwest. That is their following. So now Lancaster is like in the middle of the best Southwest. I said, I'd love to have you. It's beautiful. Will you come tour it? They said yes. I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, fast forward, they said yes. That's the miracle. That and they put money into that building, and it is gorgeous. I mean, it is gorgeous. It is one of the most, to me, the most gorgeous places in the Metroplex. Like it is so authentic and warm and like just you feel like you're not in Dallas. Yeah. So,
but there was somebody occupying that space, and that's the second beautiful miracle that I love. That God is so intentional about.
God is so good. God loves people. He loves every detail of people.
These are God's people.
And okay, so yeah, this story. It's an old man. I think he's 70. And he's running. The
closer I get to it, girl, it ain't old, but okay.
Okay, well, he also he don't look like you, Mara. He's like, you're not 70, but let me tell you, he looked like an old 70. Okay. He wasn't a young 70. And he had a flip phone. I couldn't even get a hold of him because his flip phone was like permanently set on silent. He couldn't figure out how to turn. Like this guy he knew one thing, making pralines. And he was like.
And he did it well.
He did it so well. And that's part of the miracle. I'm like, shit, how am I going to kick this guy out? He got nowhere to go. And he doesn't have the internet. He can't even, how's he going to find somewhere? Right. Furthermore, his real estate needs were complicated. He needed a commercial kitchen, which in itself is like the vent hood, the grease trap. Like he also needed a curing station, which had to be weather controlled. Right. So first I'm calling all these ghost kitchens, like, hey, can you take my, so I'm calling people like, let's figure out. I realized fast, like, if I don't find somewhere for this guy, literally going homeless. I mean, this is a problem. And he's like, no, I can't have a ghost kitchen because I have to have a curing area where I can close. I'm like, well, where am I going to put you? Like, this is literally now impossible. So I call my friend, Monty Anderson, plug on him. Options Real Estate. Really wonderful developer that loves doing good work. And I say, hey, I got a situation. Like, if this guy can't get help, he's going homeless. He's like, I get that. I said, do you have anything maybe in your Wheatland Plaza development in Duncanville? And I fact check with RJ first, like, is that a good location for you? He goes, yes. I said, do you anything that has a commercial kitchen that can be like sealed off with climate control? And he did. Mm-hmm. But the bigger miracle was, I said, problem, he's only paying $1,500 a month, all bills paid. Can you do that? And he was like, I was like, there we go. This is not going to happen. He was like, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. So he took RJ in that space for the same amount of rent on like a 5-year lease, I think.
Right. But the connection with
There's one more miracle with RJ. So before I got to that point, I'm also like, oh my gosh, how am I going to tell this poor guy that I'm kicking him out? So the first miracle was in his story. And he was I was walking around there a lot, like doing my due diligence and taking pictures and stuff. And he'd always be like, he knew what was going on. And
like it's time.
Yeah, it's time. Oh, this building's a piece of crap. And no, the sewer lines don't. He was just like grumpy and like, don't kick me out type situation. But when I brought La Calle Doce for their tour, this is the crazy part. This is when I knew, okay, God's going to take care of RJ. They came in the door. And it's a mother and a daughter team, the owners. They're beautiful. They're just beautiful. And they have and she has 2 daughters. So two grandbabies. And they walk on the door and RJ goes, his eyes get huge. And he says, Laura. And he starts crying. Y'all, RJ's been making pralines for La Calle Doce and their sister brand Ranchito, I think for like 30 years.
Right.
And 30 years ago, he was in a tough spot and Laura lent him money.
Right.
And he's crying, and he's like,
that was the God
thank
thing.
you for that loan 30 years ago. Right. Laura's husband and her son have both passed away. And he's like, I miss the Oscars.
Yes.
I'm just so sorry for you. And he's empathizing for her and her story. And just, tears. And I was like, okay.
Another one of our friends, Don Eric Thomas, did the documentary on that family on the Oscars.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's,
and they're close friends. And that lady is like the neighborhood president of, like, I call her the mayor of Lancaster.
Right.
So Miss Cheryl Wright.
Look at God doing that.
Yeah. So
he's in
that
the
was
details,
powerful.
even in
he's
the
in the
difficult
details.
Even in the difficult things.
Like so that happened. I thought, okay, Lord, you're going to take care of RJ.
Yeah.
That's when I called Monty. Monty set up the lease.
And he does. So that was 18 months in the making, just walking that. It's a vision. I couldn't see what you saw, but friends have invested with you in that development to be a part of, that movement, a movement for teaching women on how to be involved with developing commercial properties. And God is still speaking. God is still speaking to Michaella. So I have this question before we get into that. It's like, when was money not a problem? Have you gotten to that point in your life? Or like
personally or like buying deals?
Both.
I think because we entered adulthood with W-2 jobs.
W-2 jobs. Come on,
that goes a long way. And I do believe in the W-2 job. If you're an entrepreneur, get you a W-2 job.
Please.
It'll help you get financing.
Got it.
And you can, work your W-2 job, get a line of credit, and put an employee in there for $10 an hour till you can go do it, right? The W-2 job helps.
Right.
So because we did go to college, which helps you get to access W-2 jobs, I feel like money was not a problem from that day on.
Okay, good for you.
We had double income with no kids for 6 years.
Right.
And we were saving, living wisely and scrappily and skinny through the basement. So that our beginning set us up right.
Right.
In fact, it was probably less a problem then than it is now.
Right.
Because now we're full-time developers and you never know. It's very feast or famine. So sometimes I'm like, damn, I kind of missed that W-2 job.
Wow.
When I knew that was coming.
Wow.
So
there's always,
it's just different.
Yeah. There's always something behind the scenes of, I think I want that, but then can you really carry it? Can you really, everybody can't live feast to famine.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So God's still speaking.
Oh yeah. The dream. Y'all, this is crazy. And it got crazier. There's phase 2 for you. So Stewarding Space started. God told me to do downtown. I also did a deal in Denton, which was wonderful. Denton was a wonderful project, but downtown Lancaster was a magic project. Mm-hmm. So that just got me excited. Like, I'm excited for the next magic project. Like, what's the next Jesus project? And maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was just praying, Lord, what's your next project? And I also, like, he taught me a lot about identity. My job is cool. Sometimes I can get to my head. And so he's really been like, girlfriend, like, your identity is me. And so I try to be real open-handed with this job I love so much. Like, Lord, do you want me to keep going? Do you want me to have a next deal?
Right.
If you find me worthy for the next deal, I would love one. So that was kind of my prayer to him a couple weeks ago. Like, is there anything on your heart that you would like to get done in development? And I think 3 days later, I got a dream. And that was also the day before my dad's 10-year anniversary of death. Mm-hmm. And my dad is a big, just part of my story for why I wanted to go back, why I got excited when he asked me to go work in Lancaster, just because my dad loved that town and he officed on that downtown. And so the week of Dad's 10-year anniversary gone, God gives me a dream about a next deal, and it's in Lancaster. And it's an abandoned Vineyards building. It's about 38,000 square feet of just like commercial strip. You can walk to it from the downtown. And it's just been like embarrassing for the community. Like, it just looks bad. Mm-hmm. And it's also just sad. Like, you can still see the faded Vineyard signs. Like, we used to provide you food, but now for 25 years, you're not worthy of anything. Wow. That's like what it feels like. Mm-hmm. I've never had a heart for the building. My other miracle friend, Dwayne with Hug Barbecue, shout out, he's amazing. Also, crazy God story for another day. Probably 6 months ago, he was like, Michaella, you need to get that Vineyards building. And I was like, oh, no, that's not inspiring me. Sorry. Mm-hmm. So I've never had any vision for this building. I think it's important because that's kind of, sometimes that helps me decipher, is this from the Lord or not? Like, this was not from my head. Right. I had no inspiration to do a deal like this. Yeah. By the way, people on this podcast, this so far is just a dream. Mm-hmm. It's not under contract. That's not under contract. Yeah. Yeah. And also, I just finished the book that you talked about. The Dream King.
Well, come on.
I finished that book.
Amen.
And then prayed, and 3 days later I had a dream.
Well, look at that.
We haven't even talked about that book. Right. That book's really good.
Because I was with you the day of your dad's 10th anniversary.
Yes.
Heavenly birthday.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, where am I here? So he gives me this dream.
Yeah, de Havilland Ford, shout out the Fords. The Dream King.
And just like watching that, like, they took their dream seriously. Yeah. That was kind of my takeaway.
Yeah, good.
How beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I had this dream, and it's a long dream. And in the dream, like, God's like talking to me. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those dreams where you wake up and I'm like, okay, Lord, download. Tell me what this meant. What did this mean? What did this mean? And then later in my car, I'm like, transcribe, like that kind of dream. Yeah. And the dream is, he takes me to the site. So I'm standing at the Vineyards as it is now. Mm-hmm. And he goes, Michaella, buy this building and turn it into a roller skating rink. And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I never had this idea in my lifetime.
Right.
And then I call up this girl who's a neighbor, and I'm like, you're not going to believe what God told me. And then I start crying to her. And I'm like, wow, how cool is this? Like, I used to hold my mom's hand through this grocery store to get food that would feed my body as a child. Mm-hmm. And now it's literally 1990s aisles still sitting there. Mm-hmm. It's just apocalyptic, serving nobody. Mm-hmm. And in fact, it's the antithesis. It's hurting self-worth to our community. Mm-hmm. And so I'm crying to her. Like, I'm just heartbroken. I never felt that way before in real life. But in my dream life, I am heartbroken about this. So that was cool too. Then he kind of tells me, the dream is like 3 pages long, so I'll just have to text it to anyone who's interested. But he shows me more vision, and basically he wants it to be this like activated place that's family friendly with a skating rink, a ghost kitchen, small business incubation, food and alcohol. Parents can come sit and have a drink, have a glass of wine while kids are roller skating. And then there's also just a lot of parking. So he wants me to activate the front by cutting out a piece and turn it into a little park, a place that families can come hang. Mm-hmm. That's what the Lord wants it to be. The dream is more to that. When I'm walking this space, it actually is kind of this funky food hall in the dream. That's how I got that vision. But there's these two just like arrogant frat real estate boys. There's a lot of those. I need to have love for them. I work on that. Dear Lord, they're yours too. But there's a lot of them. And they have not done the best always for communities, especially communities of color.
Right.
And Lancaster in particular the only development we've had is warehouses. Only.
Fulfillment centers.
Yeah. We're having fresh food here, but like the public can't access it unless they want to go to Walmart. That's like a bummer.
So you have an awareness of your power your privilege as a white woman coming into the community and having access. And so the Lord is downloading all of this to you, like the inequity, racial inequity and all this stuff.
And with the boys, when the frat boys were walking around in this dream, I was like, Lord, and that goes further. But I said, Lord, what was that about?
Right.
He goes, Michaella, first of all, they don't see the literal opportunity that they're standing in. Like, they don't see that this is 38,000 square feet of amazingness coming.
Right.
They're like laughing about it. Second of all, that this industry has not taken well care of communities that have not been as affluent.
Right.
So he told me those two things. And so that was like showing more about his heart for development. What else about this dream, my friend? Then the Lord tells me to go tell Dwayne. Oh, no. There's more. Okay. Then
you don't have to tell us all the dream. I just know that God is still speaking to you.
Well, this part's real important. Yeah. Then he shows me another building in the dream, and it's a separate building, but there's this monster cool sign that says pharmacy. And I'm like, I gotta have that. And there's this old white dude that's like, I want to help you. And I'm okay, that's weird. And so then I pull up to the next day. I drive to Minyard. I gotta see this building. And guess what? The faded Minyard sign says. Is Minyards and pharmacy.
Okay.
So that was cool. But here's phase 2 of the dream now. I started just like, sometimes too, me trying to hear the Lord on pushing doors is sharing. So even sharing this might be more, there might be affirmations that come from this.
Right.
Like, oh, you're not going to believe what dream I got. Or, it helps, when we share what we think the Lord's doing, it helps him connect the dots between his people. So I shared this dream that I transcribed at this point because there's too many details to share.
Right.
I shared it with a neighbor.
Right.
And she starts sending me all these texts. She's like, you're not going to believe this. She sends me this article, and it says, Sony Williams and Gretchen Minyard Williams closed down the pharmacy.
Right.
It was the Highland Park Pharmacy, the Highland Park like soda fountain. So just seeing like Minyards and pharmacy, which are two very prominent words from my dream, in the same headlines, was shocking. And so I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to call Gretchen.
You should.
I'm going to find her number.
You should.
Be like, listen to what the Lord gave me. So I started digging more. Just like Lancaster was like their first like Starship Minyard store back in the 50s, I think. And then furthermore, I met with economic development. I'm like, hey, this deal's in the pipeline. I always tell them Jesus gave me it, and they roll their eyes, but they love me for it. And he goes, you know what? We should also partner with Dallas College for like just a corner of it and to help kind of with funding on the business incubator piece. Well, guess who sits on the Dallas College board? Gretchen Minyard Williams.
Get out of here.
So those two things came from when I shared this dream with another person. So that's in the pipeline.
I love it. Well, and I love it for 2 reasons, because it glorifies God and that we get to see your proof of concept, your proof of God's credibility that he will use anybody. And the team and I have heard like our fan developer, with Jack Matthews. So even though he might not infuse his story with Jesus gave me this, told me this, he's still a visionary. And so to hear him talk about, he had a vision for this, and the actual people that were like, we don't see what you see.
100%.
And then doors shut down. But so like this whole building, this 1 million square feet, I think it is here, is a manifestation of like God working through a person to have incubators all throughout this building, but it started through one person. Exactly. And now we're sitting here. So it's to be continued. So it's to be continued. Yeah, stay tuned. Thank you for the day. Walter always says I can have people come back. my producer. Yeah, who's awesome. Sending his greetings. But yeah, thanks for the time today. Yeah. Thanks for being willing to talk about it. Follow up. How can we reach you?
All right, got a website. It's not too impressive. Built it myself.
That's okay.
Stewarding.space.com.
Stewarding.space.com.
And my Instagram is stewarding.space. And if you're interested in the actual Downtown Lancaster project, it is Downtown Lancaster _TX.
_TX. Mm-hmm. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so thank you. And thank you. Just keep living, family, and tune in for more insight. And I hope you found value in the backstory of how you can become a developer yourself, but also just be a good steward of what God places in your hands. So be free flowing and look for God's activity in whatever He downloads to you. And so thanks again. Just keep living, family. We'll see you next time.